Do I have a question? Go ahead, Vic.
Vic Baumel, Precinct Committee member from Chino Valley. Thank you, gentlemen, for making the time for us to come up today and share your views with us. My challenge is this morning, I'm always looking at the internet, as most of us are today, and it was the biggest factor in all of this has been budget, budget, budget. We've heard that especially since Obama took office, because things keep getting farther and farther in debt, and we borrow so much of our money now. At the current rate, we can't even pay with the money we take in to pay our budget every year. We're behind 1.4 trillion, I believe, as of this morning. Every year, we have to borrow that money just to sustain. Obviously, drastic cuts are necessary. Gentlemen, what makes you think you can go to Washington and make a difference? And what are you going to do? Because entitlements are obvious. We can't even fund the function of the government, let alone our military and all our entitlements, the billions and trillions of dollars of entitlements we have coming up in the next decade or two. We're going to be 25 trillion in debt at our current rate in the next 12 years. And it's a challenge I think is really, really important. But I'm seeing the bus going off the cliff right now, and next year it's going to even be worse. We're going to be hitting the bottom of the canyon. So what are we going to do to correct that?
Did everybody get it? Did everybody get that question?
Do I get?
2 minutes.
Oh God, a lot of questions. As I stated earlier, if we will restore our country to a constitutional republic, you're going to see at least 5 departments gone and 2 agencies, and we can close the Fed. I'd also administer repealing the 16th Amendment and instituting a fair tax. Yay. That alone will bring billions of dollars and jobs to this country. More than you could even imagine. It'll make the 50s seem like a real recession rather than the boom it was. But there's going to be some pain involved too. On my website, I've got solutions to all these problems, and yes, I used to be in business, ran corporations, and had to meet a bottom line every quarter. Because if I didn't own the company, I got fired. I used to fire people. I never, thank God, got fired. But if we don't you can't look at government quite like a business, because it's not a business. But it acts like one by going in debt. It's not even allowed to go in debt. We're not allowed to raise our debt ceiling. Congress is constitutionally bound to pay our bills, not to increase them. That's the problem. You've got people in Washington, no pun intended, who don't understand that. They are constitutionally bound not to do the things they're doing. And you've got people that constantly vote for these things and keep doing them, and all of us sit back and let them do it. There's a group called Reno. I talked about it on the air today. Re-elect no one. And I'm right there with them. When these people keep doing what they do, which are unconstitutional violations of what they say they'll protect and serve, if someone serving in the armed forces did that, if some of you have been in there, right, what would happen to you? What would they do to you? Okay, well, what should we do to them? It's real simple. I know people don't really understand this, the concept of it. The Constitution is what made us a free enterprise nation and made us strong and independent. And it's only that that's going to restore it. All this little tweaking everybody wants to do won't work. We need a total heart transplant. We don't need a manicure.
Brian Hackard. Thank you. First of things is shut down Department of Education, EPA. All these agencies that are unconstitutional, let's bring them back to each of our states. Our state representatives can make better decisions on the local level than our feds can for us here in Arizona. As a former mayor, I understand that, and I've been there. When I'm given the power and the authority to do things, I can make change quicker than the federal government can. So let's shut that down. Second thing, if you can't pass a balanced budget, don't get you to Congress, don't get paid. On my website, I have listed 1,432 federal employees that should give a $100,000 pay cut immediately to start paying back what we stolen from Social Security. As well, let's dip into their pension fund. They have taken your money. Social Security and Medicare is what we have paid into. It's not paid by the government, it's your money. But let's get rid of these agencies. The EPA hasn't created one job, it's cost America's jobs. With that, you have forests burning in this state right now because they will not allow you to thin the forest. That's a loss of jobs. Let's get down to the simple basics. I've learned to negotiate. I learned how to work with both sides of the aisle. It's time to elect people who are willing to work for it. I'm willing to give up my salary as a U.S. Senator. I was never intended to be rich by God's standards anyways. I'm rich because I have a wife and 3 kids. That's where I'm rich at. Money is the root of all evil in this country, and we're seeing it in this country today. George Washington said in his farewell address, there's 3 things that will bring this country to its knees. Greed, failure of our religious values, and the 2-party political system when they decide not to listen to the American people. Let's start changing those things and bring our values back. We can create jobs when we bring it back to the state level, and let's start doing that today. Thank you.
Jeff Flake. Thank you, Vic. That's an excellent question. You mentioned the biggest issue out there by far. It's our $16 trillion debt and our $1.3, $1.4 trillion deficit every year, adding to that debt. Our concern is, we should be concerned about having a treasury auction and having no buyers for our debt. It's going to happen pretty soon. When China says we've had enough and we just have no buyers, some of that is happening already. That's why we keep having to buy our own debt just by printing money. And it just means bad things to come. You've got to have somebody in the Senate who knows how to stand up and say no, whether their party's in charge or the other party's in charge. And that's been my history in the House. In fact, you all know a little thing called earmarks. When I got to Washington, we were doing several thousand a year, Republicans as well as Democrats. So I went to the floor hundreds of times challenging individual earmarks. And I was told, you're tilting at windmills, you'll never do it, you'll never get rid of it. Well, guess what? There are no congressional earmarks this year in the House or the Senate. None. And it wouldn't have happened if somebody didn't stand up to their own party first and then to the Democrats when they came in power. We've got to have somebody who will do that in the Senate as well. We've passed the Ryan budget in the House, which is a good start. It takes about, well, depending on the assumptions you use, between 10 and 30 years to actually balance the budget. That's too long in my view, but it's a good start. It's better than what we have now. But we didn't have the Ryan budget at all for the years before. That's why you see me vote for very few appropriation bills, defense every once in a while and others. But we have got to cut back, whether it's getting rid of whole agencies, trimming them back across the board spending, and Brian mentioned the No Pay or No Budget, No Pay Act. Congressman Jim Cooper, a Democrat from Tennessee, has introduced that, and I'm a proud sponsor of that bill. If we don't pass a budget, we shouldn't get paid. Thanks.
All right.
Will Cardon. That is the most pressing issue we have right now. And it's no longer enough to just say, well, we're going to tackle earmarks, which are 1% of the budget, less than 1%, while at the same time voting for thousands of earmarks. It's no longer responsible to say, well, we'll talk about entitlement programs or we'll talk about Social Security and Medicare, but then we don't do anything. It's time for action, not time for words anymore. We are on the precipice. We are in a place now and getting to a point of no return. And if we don't correct this right now and immediately stop spending less than we take in, it's a simple formula that works in business, it works in your home life, it works with your family. You spend less than you take in. And we can no longer say, well, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, and that's bad. We actually have to come in and propose some solutions. If you've been, in business I like to say, if you've been a successful, or excuse me, you cannot be a successful member of a failed organization. You can't do it. You have to go in and actually make a difference. You have to provide some leadership. I think right now, one of the things reporters always ask me is, isn't it a knock that you haven't served in political office before? And I say, that is the greatest compliment I could ever get. Right now is not the time we need people who have done this over and over and over the last few years, in Republican majorities, in Republican minorities. We don't need people who sit there and, again, say what they think you want to hear, and then do something different. With respect to the budget, there are 4 simple things. Number 1, address the national debt. The idea of not paying them is a good step in the right direction. You need to propose a balanced budget amendment. You need to also say, if you don't pass a balanced budget, you're not eligible for re-election. Watch how fast that gets turned around. You need to get government off the backs of small businesses. You need to restore America's competitiveness. And we need to then make sure we grow, because that's the only way out of this debacle. I wish we had more time. If you go to my website, there's something called Back to Basics. And if you read that, there is a very detailed plan regarding your question. Thank you.